Hello and welcome to Get It Started, Get It Done, the Banyan Security podcast covering the security industry and beyond. In this episode, our host and Banyan's Chief Security Officer, Den Jones, speaks with Elvis Chan, Assistant Special Agent in charge of FBI San Francisco's Cyber Branch. Den and Elvis discuss the importance of the relationship between the FBI and the private sector, both through programs including the FBI's SISO Academy and through the relationships private sector security professionals can and should form with their local FBI field office. We hope you enjoy Den's discussion with Elvis Chan.
Okay, hey everyone. So welcome to Get It Started, Get It Done, Banyan Security's newest adventure into podcasting. I'm the host, Dan Jones, and every episode we bring in some fascinating guests, and I'm delighted for this episode to bring in Elvis Chan, one of my great friends from the FBI. So, hey, Elvis, how are you, sir?
Doing good. Thanks for having me on, Dan. It's going to be a fun conversation today.
Yeah, looking forward to it. So, I always like to ask guests, so we met a number of years ago now, but do you remember, and can you share the recollection of how we met or anything strange during that initial meeting?
Yeah, I feel like, gosh, when did we meet? Was it maybe 2016 or 2017? Right around then. But so I used to work at another company, and I do a lot of outreach with private sector, which I know we're going to talk about a lot. But I was meeting with some security folks, right? Information security folks and folks from your general counsel's office, just to talk about cyber incident response and, what could they expect from the FBI? What could they expect from the U.S. government? And so then I started talking to you, and I recognize that accent right away, right? As being a Scottish accent. And I wanted to confirm, hey, are you from Scotland? And he said, yeah. And I was like, well, I spent 3 months of my life there. This was pre-Bureau. I used to be an engineer in the semiconductor industry. And in Scotland, there used to be this thing called the Silicon Glen. It was going to be the next version of the Silicon Valley. And so I worked for a company, NEC Electronics, and I know Motorola was out there. I know Intel was out there. And so it was actually... the Silicon Glen was in a town right near Livingston, right? And you said, Elvis, that's where I'm from. I'm from Livingston. And I'm like, yeah, I would never have known it. But the reason Livingston was kind of big in our lives is because there was a Home Depot there, and there was other stores, but it was anchored by the Home Depot. And then we started reminiscing about that. Remember, Dan? Yeah.
And it's funny. They always had this slogan, life is for Livingston. and Livingston's one of those new towns, and it's interesting now because all of those companies, or almost all of those companies, have since pulled out.
Yeah.
So in the 80s and 90s, then it was huge. I mean, there was so many of those factories, and then there was all to support things like the mobile market, early computers and things like that. So I used to work in a company called Shinetsu Handotai.
Yeah,
that was my first IT job, and it was a fascinating process. And so you were there for 3 months, and it you survived the Scottish weather, the Scottish people, and the food, right?
Yeah. I mean, the haggis, someone slipped it into a meat pie, and so I thought I was eating a meat pie, and I said, "There's something off about this pie. What's going on with this?" And that's a haggis pie, Elvis. And I'm like, oh. And let me tell you, my body was telling me it did not like that haggis pie I ate for the next day or so.
Oh, that's funny. I miss good haggis, but probably maybe the one you got wasn't the best haggis pie. So awesome. So great to have you on the show. I'd love to hear. So, we get to meet every now and again. There's so many things going on in the world and so many geopolitical things, but that has a huge influence on the cyber things as well, right? So why don't you start off by sharing, for those who don't know who the FBI is, what the charter, the vision, mission, those kind of things. Why don't you bring FBI to light for us?
Okay, that sounds good. Well, hopefully, the good news is Dick Wolf on CBS. I think he has like 3 or 4 FBI shows. I think most people are pretty familiar with the FBI, but yeah, for those of you who haven't seen Silence of the Lambs or any of the other shows, Federal Bureau of Investigation, We are the primary law enforcement, the national level law enforcement agency. That's one of our hats. Where the other hat that we wear is that we're the domestic security intelligence service. So that sounds a little scary, but post 9/11, that was really a big deal for us. Is like, our job is to keep the nation safe. And we do that by working with all of the other intelligence community agencies within the United States, as well as with state, local, and tribal law enforcement. So really the bread and butter of our job is right? The investigations. So anything that you think can be investigated, anything where there's interstate boundaries being crossed or overseas boundaries being crossed, probably there's a federal statute that allows the FBI to investigate it.
Awesome. And what inspired you to join? So, but you said, when you were in Livingston, you were doing a whole different job. So what inspired you to join the FBI?
Yeah. So like I said, I used to be an engineer, and I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, that's like a 7 out of 10, right? So I majored in chemical engineering. I worked in the semiconductor industry. I used to make computer chips. That's a really good living, right? And so living very comfortably, but I'd always yearn for something more. I'd always yearn for public service, but being first generation born in the United States, both of my folks immigrated here from China. They always wanted something better for me, right? And so there was a few acceptable jobs for a first generation born American, and like engineer, doctor, attorney, accountant, like that was kind of the acceptable occupations. And so I picked engineering, and I really enjoyed that. One of my buddies who I worked with at the company I was at, his game plan was always to join the Bureau. But the way it works is you need to have at least 3 years of job experience before you can, apply to be an FBI agent. So he did that, right? So he did his, actually he worked 4 years with me. We became really close friends. He said, "Elvis, I am putting in for the FBI." And I said, "You are crazy." And he got in, and he's calling me from the FBI Academy in Quantico, which you were able to visit with me. Maybe we'll talk about that later. But he said, "Elvis," he's calling me on the phone. It's like, "You would love this. We're shooting guns. We're kicking down doors. I'm learning about the Constitution. This is awesome." And so it kind of relit the fire of wanting to do public service. I talked to my wife about it, and I said, "Hey, if I want to get in, this is my only chance, because there's an age maximum, right? You can be a maximum of 36 years old before you are allowed to join the Bureau. You have to be younger than that." And so I was running up against it. And I guess you could say I had my midlife crisis early. I applied. And a year later, almost 12 months to the day, I was at the FBI Academy in Quantico getting sworn in. And wow. Since then, it's just been a crazy ride.
That's awesome. And so going through the academy and stuff, and then even into your role now, I've met quite a few people in the FBI, and we can talk about the SISO Academy and stuff. As I met people, they're always like, "Oh, Elvis, he's the guy." So you certainly, kind of like what I think of for me with my reputation. I've got a reputation, but I think, everybody I spoke to, or everyone that spoke about who Elvis was, you have this bigger than life reputation. And I don't think it's the name. So what do you put down? What's one of the biggest things you'd attribute to your success?
So I would this comes back to my leadership philosophy. I guess we're getting meta pretty quickly here. So I know a lot of people talk about having a servant leader philosophy, but I really, really believe in that, right? So my job at the end of the day, whether I was in private sector or now in the government, number one, serve my people, right? How can I help the people? And then with that, serve the mission, right? What is the mission? Back then in the private sector, I had to make so many wafer ships, right? We had to get so many wafers and the throughput and everything. But really the FBI's mission, so much cooler, right? My mission is protect the American people and uphold the Constitution, right? And that's a mission that pretty much anyone can get behind. But how do I do that? And it's by serving the people, right? Whether I'm a line level employee, what can I do to help out, right? How can I run this investigation better? How can I help the victims of this company that were just hacked? So really, that has been my motto. How can I do this? And I would say that, like when I get something started, I get it done, right? I have really good follow through. So I guess that's like another skill, but really having the humility to know that I am just a very small cog in a large machine and just trying my best to like lead from where I am standing. And whether it's leading by, mastering whatever skill I need to, or running whatever investigation, or supervising people. It's really that. It's like, how can I lead from the place I'm at? Like, I'm not looking like what's my next rung on, on the ladder that I want to get up to. It's really focusing on what do I need to do here? How can I be impactful? How can I help the people? And I think that has what has carried me is right. Like I've never had an agenda. I've never wanted to be the deputy director of the FBI. I joined this organization because I wanted to make a positive impact. And I think it shows.
Awesome. Yeah. No, that's brilliant. And then the partnership between the FBI and the private sector. So, I'm aware more and more about that relationship and partnership. But do you want to explain a little bit about, well, what's the FBI's goal and mission with that? And then how would you think that benefits private sector? And how do you think private sector could get more involved?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think people have this myth or this conception in their head that the FBI and the US government, we're like big brother. We see everything, we know everything. And that is completely not true, right? I think, you've seen different statistics and surveys that say within the United States, the vast majority, I think over 85% of all critical infrastructure is controlled by private entities, right? Either private entities or public entities that are not the US government. And so our job is to defend like the critical infrastructure, right? The critical sectors within the, critical sector industries within the United States, but we don't own most of the property, right? Who does? The private sector and the public sector. And so we need to be engaged with them to be able to do our job. We need to be engaged with you, Dad, right? To be able to do our jobs because, at Banyan Security, and you know this better than most, like you are a vendor and you get put into these companies, right? And you can see what's going on. I don't know if people know this, but me at the FBI, I can't see what's going on at the company. Banyan Security can see a lot better what's going on at this company. Now, I will know better maybe what the Russian spies are doing or what cyber criminals are doing through the course of our investigations, but I'm like looking through a straw, right? And we only have one piece of the puzzle, and really industry has the other piece of the puzzle. So when you frame it like that, it totally makes sense for me to be able to get along and for me to develop relationships with all of these different companies, right? So within the FBI, we have figured out like who are the strategically important companies that we have to get along with. And like it's like if pretty much if you're on a Fortune 500 company or a Fortune 1000 company, or then you'll know that, I'm probably working at a company that the FBI needs to know and get along with. And some people say, well, Elvis, I don't work for any of those, but I'm like, but are you a contractor? Are you a supplier for a Fortune 1000 company? And invariably, if the answer is yes, then we probably need to have a relationship with you.
Yep. And you and I, we first met during my days in Adobe, and then I left and went to Cisco, and I call you up straight away and I'm like, hey, Elvis, I've moved. And then 18 months later, I joined Banyan as their CSO, and it's like, hey, I've moved again. And I'm not the kind of person that really tries to move around companies so often. I mean, I was with Adobe for 19 years, so maybe that was longer than I anticipated. But yeah, so my recent move here, and as you mentioned, Banyan, we have customers that are big household name customers. And while we might not be the biggest target, they very well will be. And I'd hate to think of people coming through Banyan to get to our customers, because that's not the plan, right? And then so if a company wants to learn more about the partnership and wants to get involved, what do they need to do? How do they go find out that?
So that's pretty easy, right? So, I mean, we hustle. I think, I hustle. I'm at a lot of different conferences and events. And so, we're typically there. You can reach out and and come shake my hand and talk to me. That's one way. You can go to FBI.gov, right? So we actually, you can do a speaker request form, right? And ask for an FBI agent or analyst to come in and talk to your company about a variety of things, not just cybersecurity. That's definitely another way. A third way I would say that's really important is we have an organization called InfraGard, which is the FBI's, it's a nonprofit organization. It's a 501c, but partners with the FBI where you can attend quarterly meetings, get FBI briefings, and you can also get FBI reporting on a monthly basis. And so InfraGard, it's spelled kind of weird. It's INFRAGARD. If you just Google that, you can find and you can join to be a member. It's really easy to be a member. Only 2 requirements. Number 1, you have to be a U.S. citizen. And number 2, you can't have a criminal record. So I'm, fine, upstanding listeners of this podcast will qualify for both of those.
All 5 of them. Awesome. Now, so as part of so let me jump in. So as part of our relationship, then you got me invited to the SISO Academy. So I was privileged and blessed to be there. I didn't get to go to Quantico though, because it was the first one after COVID. So I was in Charlotte, which for me was still a brilliant experience. I got to shoot a Tommy gun. So I remember that. I've got pictures of that stuff. So what's the CISO Academy and what do you think the benefits of people getting involved in that are?
Yeah, so you and I guess most people, it's the Chief Information Security Officer Academy. So FBI headquarters, we thought from a cyber perspective, it's really important for CISOs to understand like where the FBI is coming from, right? And so you went, I think, to the 9th iteration that we've done, and it's been super popular. I've noticed that in CISO circles, it's kind of a badge of honor having gone to the CISO Academy, right? Because we typically take between 25 to 30 people per class, and field offices get to nominate CISOs, from different companies in their area. And, very few get chosen. So like you were one of the chosen few, I guess I'm going to be pulling up a Highlander reference right there. You were, you were the chosen one. But really during the course of that week, we provide classified briefings. We do roundtable discussions with other U.S. government agencies. And really, I think the fun time is like I said, me and Den hanging out at the pub, really just being able to share war stories, right? Like what happened during this incident response? How did you guys handle that? How could things have been better? Just being able to shoot the breeze. But it's really a nice event that we do. So that's another reason. If you're not already plugged in with your local FBI field office, you need to be, because if you're a CISO and this sounds really intriguing to you, getting to hear classified briefings, getting to, shoot the breeze with senior level FBI and US government executives and getting to shoot guns, then hey, you should get plugged into your local FBI office.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so briefings and things like that. And, I sat through and listened to some of those, which for me was just brilliant and then great for me to take back to my company. At the time it was Cisco, and then share with our CSO there, really some of the areas or concerns that you're able to share, So for me, that's a really valuable opportunity to kind of look at your company and where you're spending your money, and gain an insight. Now, so talking about gaining insight, you work on a lot of, I'm going to say they're very highly publicized events, incidents for some of the companies around the world and stuff. What can you share, as you work with companies on breaches, what can you share about the key takeaways and the lessons that you think these companies are learning as they go through the events?
So, I know I'm preaching to the choir, Dan, but the one thing I've learned is the companies that have defense in depth and like a resilient culture, those are the companies that can survive a major security breach and then come back stronger than ever, right? Unfortunately, many of the companies that I deal with don't have defense in depth and don't have that type of resiliency, right? But I really think it's more and more important these days. let's just say like, yeah. So we've talked about this before. FBI San Francisco, right? Like it's no, we're the lead office investigating the SolarWinds breach, right? And so that's like a supply chain issue, right? And so having defense in depth also means, hey, like, do we have we audited all of our suppliers, and what does it look like, if something bad happens, like, if one of those suppliers is compromised in one way. And I guess this is going to be a nice segue, like specifically from the SolarWinds breach and similar supply chain breaches. What I've really learned from it is we as an industry need to start moving, and some people are already moving, to a zero trust architecture, right? Really knowing that, just taking it on fact that, hey, I think that I'm already compromised. How can I minimize the compromise, right? How can I have these little islands of trust inside this entire ocean of distrust, right? So I guess we can talk about that, but really zero trust architecture is the direction I think we're moving in.
Yeah. And it's, funny for me, and one of the reasons I joined Banyan was I have great confidence in the technology. I know how unaware people are of zero trust and what do you mean by zero trust, and that whole over marketed nonsense and hype, really. And at the end of it, for me, I kind of look at these breaches. So whether it's a ransomware attack or whether it's someone use sloppy username and passwords and they don't have MFA set up, so some of the basics, right? I sit there and say, look, this landscape, or this thing called zero trust, it's such an emerging industry in the sense of the market opportunity right now for the company, certainly for a company like Banyan, because what we're doing is we are saying, hey, we don't trust the network, we don't trust this big network. We want an application to really look and feel like its own island, and in order for you to access the application, you have to have a device that's got a great posture. We're continuously authenticating it, and then you're directly connecting to the application. And for us, it's just a great thing that the government's also saying, hey, this zero trust thing, you want to pay attention to it. Do you think that many companies, especially the ones who go through a big breach, they understand that, if they had their third-party suppliers access their apps and services via zero trust model, that would maybe have helped them? I mean, are you confident in that?
Yeah, I am confident in that, because, so I can't get into the gory details of all the significant security breaches I've investigated, but yeah, invariably you'll see, once they're in, it's either a flat network and they can just move laterally, or maybe it was a segmented network, but they were able to compromise a network administrator's credentials and then just use those all over the network, right? And so having zero trust architecture, I mean, it's still new, right? Zero trust architecture, right? NIST really only came out with guidance, 800-207, like in 2020, right? Which is the framework. So it's still really new. And we really rely on the private sector, including your company, to help us still flesh this out, right? Like, we're still trying to put this framework together. So, hey, the thing is, you're going to see the gory details more than I on a daily basis. So being able to help inform the government, hey, we really think the framework should include this, or you really need to consider these things. So, public calls for papers, public calls for input, any NIST related stuff. I mean, it's good, right? And that's what we need, because at the end of the day, you don't want the government dictating this stuff to you. You want to be able to collaborate with the government to make what is a reasonable framework, so that everyone can get on board with it and everyone can aspire towards something.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things I've noticed over the years, various companies and various attacks, that this idea of, I might have a segmented network, but it's too costly to really segment it down to the nittiest grittiest little subnet, right? So in the end, your office network tends to be a flat network, and then the segmentation is data center, labs, conference and equipment, or other stuff that you care less about. But that flat network ultimately means that the privileged people also are on that flat network with their regular devices, but then they use those same devices to elevate and get into the data centers. So the reality is I wrote a paper on this, which is how to turn your office network into a guest network. The reality is if your office network was just like a guest network and you couldn't see any peer-to-peer stuff, all you can do is get to the internet, and then from the internet you can get to your apps and services, then all of this lateral movement stuff would really, really be, hampered. I mean, I always said to my old boss, I'm hesitant to use the word eliminate, but I am really confident that we could almost eliminate lateral movement during a compromise. And as I explained how you would go about it, like what steps are required, publishing your applications in a zero trust methodology to begin with, and then you don't need to access them via your internal network because they're published and you can go via the internet. So for me, that was always cool. Now, one of the things I think a lot of people are kind of numb to the fact in the news that breaches happen now. I think, people hear in the news a breach a day almost. Certainly one a month hits the mainstream media. I kind of look at, though, a lot of companies are now judged just on how they communicate to their customers and to the public about the breach. So what advice would you have for companies when they are breached on how they communicate to their customers?
No, that's really important. And I think obviously there are liability issues, right? And so if you're a company with some financial wherewithal, you're going to have your internal general counsel's office. You're going to have a third party, right? External counsel, and they're going to help you with the messaging. However, I would say that the more transparent and honest you can be, the better off you will be, right? If you're a publicly traded company, being honest with your shareholders, right? Being honest with your stakeholders is really important. And what I find to be the case is that is actually more reassuring, right? Because at the end of the day, every single organization has been hacked or is being hacked or will be hacked, right? And so like SolarWinds, case in point, right? Guess what? The FBI, Department of Justice, we're SolarWinds customers and we were breached just like everyone else, right? Yeah. I would say, we had defense in depth. We were able to minimize the amount of lateral movement, right? But just, I think trying to be honest, that's without like you're not giving away to the keys of the kingdom, but being able to say very quickly, being able to come out and say, hey, on this day, at this time, we became aware that there was a security incident. We are cooperating with the FBI in this matter. And, when we can, we will, share additional information, right? And then, doing a 10K filing and going through that. But I have found that even though people seem numb to it, they still appreciate honesty, right? Yeah. I think people can appreciate when a company spokesperson is being authentic as opposed to CYA.
Yeah. And it's funny. I would like to coin this term now, Elvis. 3 T's: timely, transparent, and trusted. And I think if your communication follows those 3 T's, so we should patent that somewhere.
Yeah.
If you follow that, I think it really helps because you can see someone's talking BS and they're not being truthful. That's you can sniff that a mile away. And one thing that was really good for me, actually going back to the SISO Academy, was there was a conversation that you participated in with an executive from a company that was willing to share. And the whole conversation was really about transparency and trust. And without, not sharing who the company is, but I know who the company is. And I'll tell you, after the way they handled it, people have more trust and respect for that company than ever before. And for me, it's brilliant. I mean, it was just absolutely brilliant, the conversation on how people could share, it's a hard decision. And like you say, you've got legal counsel, both your own plus an external. And it's not easy. And, I've been involved in discussions and tabletops and real life stuff. And when you're in the moment and you're in the event, there's an adrenaline rush. But part of the adrenaline rush is also you trying to stay calm and figure out like what the best right move is. And that's why for us, tabletop exercises in our industry are a really good way to kind of get yourself thinking about it. So here's a couple of silly questions. So you've got 2 US patents or patents or whatever the accent is. Are you able to share what those are or anything about those?
Yeah, I mean, those are from my previous career, as an engineer. So they're both in the semiconductor field. And one of the patents is to improve the reliability of copper wiring on chips, right? So just a different way to put barrier metals, because you and I both know copper, it can rust, right? It can oxidize, right? So you need to coat it with a barrier metal is what we call it, but just a special technique to coating copper wiring so that it will be more reliable. That was one thing. Wow. Another thing, the other patent was for, so when you're forming the copper wiring on these computer chips, there's a lot of just copper contamination like all over the chip. And the problem with that is copper is conductive, right? So you can accidentally have like copper particles in between copper wires and you could short the wiring. And so we developed a method just to use like regular acidic chemicals in a specific combination to clean off all of that copper contamination. So both of my patents were trying to make computer chips more reliable. I've probably lost like 90% of your audience, but both of these took like 3 or 4 years of my life. So I'm still very proud of those accomplishments.
Yeah, no, I think anyone that's got patents to their names, they should always be proud because they're not easy to get, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things, in your kind of FBI role, you've specialized, and I think you still do, in election cyber stuff as well as counterterrorism cyber stuff. So is there any sanitized, non-classified, juicy details you can share on what you've learned during those 2 endeavors?
Yeah, so I'll talk about election security because that's the more recent one. So I was very involved. Our field office, FBI San Francisco, was very involved in helping to protect the U.S. elections in 2020. And I think we can all agree, or I think many of us can agree, that it was a very safe election, that there was no malign foreign influence. There was mostly not voter fraud, despite what you hear on different outlets. Chris Krebs, the former director for the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, said he believes this is the safest election ever in the United States, and I agree with him. It was as safe as it could possibly be. That doesn't mean that we didn't have a few hiccups and, maybe people were registered in 2 or 3 counties, things like that. Yes, that happens every year, but completely different from 2016, where we did not, even though foreign actors were trying to interfere in our elections, the FBI, the US government, working in conjunction with the private sector, as well as with election officials from every single state and, protectorate, we were really able to do it. And you're going to say, hey, Elvis, what was the juicy stuff? The juicy stuff was we talked with all of these entities I mentioned regularly, at least on a monthly basis, and right before the election, probably on a weekly basis, right? If they were seeing anything unusual, if we were seeing anything unusual, sharing intelligence with technology companies, with social media companies, so that they could protect their own platforms, right? That's where the FBI and the US government can actually help companies, right? So we have all of these investigations, we have all of these methods for collecting intelligence, we share them with you, and then you do what you want with them to protect your networks, right? If like we have an investigation on an advanced persistent threat, like APT28, right? And we're tracking on them and watching where they're going. Hey, we shared indicators out on multiple occasions with many companies where we saw APT28 activities were going on, right? So the secret sauce is communication, but I guess it's not that secret. It seems obvious, but I'm not going to lie. Like in 2016, there was not that same level of communications between the U.S. government and the private sector. Yeah. And then on the other side, like in terms of cyber terrorism, like people are always wondering, like, what is cyber terrorism, Elvis? And so our definition, it's hacking on behalf of, at the behest of, or in sympathy of a terrorist organization, right? Like ISIS or Al-Qaeda or Hezbollah. Those are mostly classified conversations that we're having. But what I can tell all of your listeners is that right now, we don't think that any of these international terrorist groups have the capability of opening up the floodgates in Folsom Dam or knocking out the power grid in Santa Clara County. It's not that they don't want to do it. It's just that right now, we don't think they have the capability. You know, all of the counterinsurgency, counterterrorism efforts that the United States and its partners around the world have really been focused on keeping ISIS and terrorist organizations like ISIS on the run so that they don't have time to build up this capability.
Oh, awesome. And I was just thinking of this. So as you were saying that they don't have the capabilities, but there are certain geopolitical situations in the world right now. And I think the government's term is shields up. So
yes,
you want to explain what's going on and where the shields need to be up?
Yeah. So Jen Easterly, she's the current director for SISO. She's the one who coined that term shields up. She's a Star Trek fan. She's a Trekkie. I am myself. So I thought that was a brilliant piece of marketing. Hopefully Gene Roddenberry's heirs won't be suing us anytime soon for that one. But where we in the U.S. government are saying, if you are in one of the 17 designated critical infrastructure sectors, of which information technology is one of them, then you need to be more mindful. But I don't want to freak people out. Where we have seen the most, let's say, reconnaissance activities, cyber reconnaissance activities, specifically from the Russian government, is in the energy sector, in the transportation sector, specifically the part of the transportation sector that distributes energy, and then the financial sector. That's where we've seen a lot of heavy reconnaissance from the Russian government as well as the Chinese government, right? The Russian government, I think, because they want to do harm to us. I think everyone who's paying attention to the news knows that the U.S. and its allied countries have put a lot of economic sanctions on the Russians, all of the oligarchs. There's been a lot of sanctions going on. I keep saying this, and I know I don't want to be right, but I know I'm going to be right, is at some point, the Russian government, Vladimir Putin, is going to decide that doing cyber retaliation against the United States and NATO partners is going to be the way to go, right? They're starting to feel the pain, economically speaking, militarily speaking. And one way that they can really attack us and partner countries is through our infrastructure, right? Like we are a very internet connected society, and being able to do harm to us, I definitely think that is something that I worry about. And that's why I'm hoping that the companies listening, they do MFA, right? Hey, let's do some multi-factor authentication. Let's do network segmentation. Let's do user access management. Like those are just three. I know they cost some money, but if you can do those three things, you will take care of the vast majority of the potential vulnerabilities within your organization.
Yeah, no, it's funny. It's, you and I have spoken about this, about just doing the basics right. I mean, I think too many times people try and invest, so the term defense in depth is brilliant, but don't lose sight of getting the basics right. Like having MFA across all the key applications you use. And for me in Adobe, we wanted to make it available to all applications, not even the top ones, because I didn't want to spend time to figure out what one is a top one. Most people talk about protect the crown jewels. It's like, well, I don't have time or want to spend the money to figure out what the crown jewels are. Let's make all of it be crown jewels, and then make sure all of it's behind MFA. And then understand if you've got a role like a server admin or an infrastructure admin, then how you operate within your role, regardless of the infrastructure you go to, just assume it's all critical. And then that means that how you behave is the same every single time. So it makes it easier for people to know what their role and responsibility is. And so as we kind of can get to the end here, couple of things. What would you say still keeps you up at night? You've experienced a lot of things, so I can imagine not much keeps you up at night. But what keeps you up?
So, I mean, the good news is I do sleep pretty regularly. It was a little stressful when the Russians first invaded Ukraine because, very involved with supporting, Ukrainian security services because a lot of the information that they needed was from the tech sector here in San Francisco. But I would say there's really two things that keep me up at night. And one of them we've kind of already talked about is the Russian government, right? So not for nothing, Russia has more nuclear weapons than the United States does, right? And so just you want countries to be predictable, right? Like the United States, we're always telegraphing what we're going to say or what we're going to do, right? Because we want to be predictable. We want to stay in a stable regime. But right now, you can just see from the news that Russia is not doing as well as they thought they should be in Ukraine. And I'm worried because I know firsthand what their cyber capabilities are. And I'm just waiting for a coordinated ransomware attack, right? They've got these Conti guys or these R-Evil guys under their thumb. And I'm sure that there's a lot of organizations who have been exploited by these companies, but they haven't pushed the red button yet to activate the ransomware and lock up people's data. I'm really worried about that, like coordinated ransomware attacks. That's my immediate short-term concern. What keeps me up at night, that's a longer, more existential threat, is the Chinese government, right? So I think in the next 5 years, the Chinese economy is going to pass the American economy, right, in terms of size. And so I am really worried about what is it going to look like in around the globe when you have a country that's a one-party system, right, that's under autocratic control, that's getting to dictate, what are the rules of engagement, right? And you can already see with the Belt and Road Initiative that the Chinese government is doing. You think you're getting these sweetheart deals or loans and infrastructure, getting highways and ports getting built, but you'll find that there's all of these strings attached, that the loans from the Chinese government or that the strings that the Chinese government is wanting to attach so that you can have increased trade with them, not worth it, right? I would say the Chinese government's really looking to just be transactional, right? You give me something, I give you something. Whereas we have fallen short here in the United States. I'm not going to lie that we haven't, but we are aspiring, right? We're a country with ideals where we want democracy. We're looking for a liberal democracy where people are treated with dignity. And yes, we have fallen short, but I think we're looking to be a transformational country when we're dealing with other countries, as opposed to the Chinese government, which is just looking to be transactional. And so it's trying to make sure that, hey, right now, I would say maybe with the way the Chinese government is handling COVID, this is what it looks like when an autocracy is handling a bad situation. Whereas the American situation, it's been messy, right? But it's been messy. But guess what? I just read the news that we will have regained all of the jobs that we lost in COVID by August of this year, barring all of the inflation and everything else. So I think those are the two things that keep me up at night.
Awesome. Yeah. And it'd be concerning if China and Russia decided to partner more together. I think that would keep me up, maybe more than the everything else combined. So as we wrap, Elvis, one thing, if our listeners took one thing away from our conversation with you today, what would you want me to take away?
So number one is, if you do not already have a relationship with your friendly FBI office, please reach out. You can look on the FBI.gov website, figure out, where your closest field office is, and send an email. Say, hey, I would like to establish a relationship with the FBI. And, every field office has a private sector engagement coordinator, right? Whose main job is to connect with the private sector. And so, depending on what industry you are and what you're interested in, they will have an FBI employee, like most likely an agent or an analyst, like reach out just to establish a relationship. Because at the end of the day, I'm not going to lie, when I get a phone call from a CISO, it's usually Friday afternoon and their hair is like completely on fire, right? Wouldn't it be nice to have an established relationship and not have to build up this trust relationship, in a minute on a Friday afternoon, right? But like me and you, right? Like we've known each other, for like how many, six years now, right? So having that trust that we built up, knowing that I'm not going to screw you if you, share information with you, that I'm actually going to help you, right? That I'm actually going to find, look in our holdings and see if I have indicators to share back with you so that you can do threat hunting, right? So having that relationship built up is the most important thing.
Awesome. Elvis, thank you very much. I know we're a little over time, but really appreciate it. Great conversation. So everyone, so you heard it from Elvis. If you don't have a relationship with someone awesome like Elvis, then reach out to the FBI, use the Google searching business, and you can find a lot of information there. So as we wrap up the show, thanks again to Elvis. And folks, thanks for watching, listening, and we'd love to hear some feedback. And then we've got some amazing guests around the corner. Some of them are actually going to be some Banyan customers, and then some of them are other professionals in the industry where we're not going to reveal too many names just yet, though, so stay tuned. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening. To learn more about Banyan Security and find future episodes of the podcast, please visit us at banyansecurity.io. Special thanks to Urban Punks for providing the music for this episode. You can find their track Summer Silk and all their music at urbanpunks.com.